Hey, this is Bill Oakley, and you're listening to Four Finger Discount.
Welcome to Four Finger Discount, the podcast where we're always sending our love down the well. This week we're here to review episode 8F11. It is Radio Bart. I am Dando.
I am Guy. We are starting a little early today, so forgive me if I sound a little more sultry than usual. But there's a very good reason why we're up and at 'em. Tell 'em, Dando.
Because today we are very lucky to be joined by former Simpsons writer, showrunner, and Instagram's favourite foodie expert. It's the legendary Bill Oakley. Bill, how are you, sir?
Hello, it is good to be here. I'm so glad I didn't have to get up early like you guys did. It's a leisurely 12:30 here in Portland, Oregon.
What's on the menu today for you, sir? You're the legendary food expert now, so what's going on?
Well, I finally found, after months of searching, the Old Bay clam chowder made by Campbell's Chunky Soups. And I know this doesn't mean anything to people in Australia, but Old Bay I'm from Maryland. It's a very Maryland thing. It's kind of a spice that you use for crabs and things like that. And this pre-made soup with it has been hard. I've been looking for it for months. It's been my white whale. I finally found it yesterday. So that's on tap for me after we finish this.
How did you pronounce that? Was it chowder, did you say?
I did. I said chowder. Don't worry. You're not going to trap me with that one. I said chowder.
So by this point, though, can you not just contact the companies and say, I want this, send it to my house?
I don't there's a weird relationship between companies and me. And I think the thing is that 95% of people who do this kind of thing on Instagram just post what they're sent uncritically. And just like, here's the new McRib is back at McDonald's. Here's the new sandwich from Burger King. A lot of the times, what people follow me for is criticism. So, is accurate, frank, honest criticism about this stuff. So I don't solicit companies to send it to me. Sometimes I do once every 2 years. I'm like, well, this is a product I love. Can I get some more for free? Yes, that would be good. But in general, I don't ask them for stuff. And most of them have stopped sending me stuff too. Like all the companies that used to send me stuff, like McDonald's and Arby's, have after I gave them a bad review this year. It could just be a coincidence, but they have stopped sending me stuff, which is probably for the best because it's a weird business.
It's good that you're the name we can trust, Bill. I mean, that you've got a bit of discernment when it comes to your snack treats.
I like to think so. I've certainly developed a palate, a knowledgeable palate for this type of thing, for snack treats, for fast food. And I've been increasingly drawn into the world of fancy food, and like I'm having more like imported pickles and oysters, and I get invited out to fancy restaurants and stuff. So, and I don't have any problem with that stuff. I'm happy to get it. It's usually, especially if it's for free, of course. But I am, I'm broadening out a little bit. Yes. With all the things I do.
Were you always a foodie, or is this something that's just been born out of the explosion of the steamed hams?
I was not. Well, I would never call myself a foodie, but I was always interested in like when the McDonald's would come out with a new burger. I wanted to be the first one to try it and tell everybody about it, or the new flavor of Lay's potato chips, or the new Reese's candy type thing. So I've always been like that. I've always been interested in those in new types of food. I have never been particularly the kind of person who took photos of my food or even really discussed it with other people until about 5 years ago when I suddenly realized I could do that on Instagram and people might enjoy it.
I'm just going to be honest, I'm jealous. Guy and I were discussing this off the air before we came on here. How do you keep your figure? Because you eat junk food a lot. I'm looking at him like, how is this guy not morbidly obese? Like, what? Are you just on the treadmill all day? What's going on?
The thing is, you guys have first of all, let me say, even when I'm not eating junk food, I don't eat healthy. So that's not it. It's basically that I don't eat all that much. I rarely eat. I don't eat breakfast. I eat a very light lunch in general, and then in the evening is when I go nuts. And I know that's the unhealthy. People say that's unhealthy, but that's been disputed by a number of studies recently. So, and I don't eat a lot of the stuff. The thing is, one of the things I've developed in the course of doing this is unless I'm loving something, I don't finish it. And that's a skill that has really benefited me because 80% of stuff I get, I don't love. And I just, I put it in the compost bin. So that's one thing. And in fact, I would probably be in excellent shape if it weren't for all the beer. The beer is what's keeping me, it's keeping me with this healthy, plump figure. If I didn't have any beer, I'd actually probably be pretty slim and healthy looking.
I'm glad that you're someone who seeks out a variant or seeks out I like to think we might be kindred spirits in that regard because this morning I'm eating not regular Oreos with my morning coffee, but double stuffed cinnamon bun Oreos.
Oh, those are pretty good, right?
Not bad, although it is a It is a sugar rush and a half, I'll tell you. I mean, it's what I need to get me going in the morning. But yeah, I'm someone who goes to like I was about to say the second-hand shop, but you don't do that for groceries. We call it NQR here in Australia. Not quite right. So it's the brands that didn't really take off, and the supermarkets have a whole bunch of them. So they'll usually end up at these remainder stores. And I just love going through I was like, I can see why this didn't take off, but damn it, if you've marked it down to a third of the regular price, I'm going to take 3 of them home and give them a whirl.
I'm just like that. I love to go to the dollar. In America, we have the dollar store where everything costs $1, although inflation has made that a little bit more flexible. Now things are $1.50 or whatever. But where the stuff, and it's often where the stuff, NQR, as you said, they got all the barbecue sauce that had a flavor that everyone hated. And they have all the frozen, they always have stuff that is kind of leftover or weird. And most of it is actually not that good. But once in a while, I will find some gold in those shelves.
We have what we call home brand here, which is sort of like what would you call that guy? What's the equivalent in the States of that? Just like the cheap brand of, like the supermarket brand of corn chips. I will say to the day I die that the home brand corn chips are better than any Doritos I've ever tasted.
That's often the case. You find these things, these regional things that nobody's ever heard of, or some local brand. The brand that comes from the convenience store. Here we have 7-Eleven, often has excellent chips and sandwiches and things. And I hear that in Japan, it's a whole different level even from what we have here. But that I agree with you. That's often the case. And those things are neglected because they don't have any marketing. Unlike Doritos and Lay's, which are constantly bombarding you with celebrities on, basketball players on the bags and stuff. Those brands don't ever get any attention. And there's hidden gems in there.
Are you a sucker? Because I was a sucker growing up for, when they put like cards or we used to call them Tars, those little pogs, as you call them in the States, in chips. Were you a sucker for those kind of things?
No, not really. I'm a lot older than you. There used to be things in cereal boxes that when I was young, that was definitely when I was like 7 or 8, when we had things, when there'd be prizes, especially from the Monster cereals. I don't know if you guys have the Monster cereals like Count Chocula, Frankenberry. Those, the Monster cereals often had great prizes, which that's the kind I was definitely influenced heavily by the prizes and cereals when I was a kid. After that, I didn't care so much.
Well, let's transition now into our Steamed Ham Society, because this thing looks like a whole lot of fun for a Simpsons fan, particularly that middle tier. I think it's $17 Australian, but it looks $17 US. Either way, it looks great. Let's talk about Steamed Ham Society.
This is a thing that I started about 6 months ago that has taken off to a large extent, and I hope that it will become my full-time job in a couple of years, because it's very fun. I love it's basically, let me say, to explain this for people who aren't familiar, everybody listening to this podcast probably knows what steamed hams are, but it's a euphemism for hamburgers. And so this is a club for people who like food. And as you said, it's people who like food, like to talk about food, say, I found this amazing chicken sandwich on my vacation. I found these incredible Doritos at the secondhand store. And that's the kind of thing that we talk about. And it's a club for food appreciators with also a Simpsons element. So what we have is we have live streams. We have all sorts of stuff. There's a newsletter that I put out every month that catalogs all the latest foods you have to try, and sometimes recipes and things that people have sent me. There's also a live stream once a month with usually a food luminary. Like we had the food critic from the Los Angeles Times just a few days ago. Before that, we had the guy who does Sandwiches of History, who is a member of the society. We have chefs, things like that. And there's other levels too for people who really want to get into it. There's levels where I mail you some of the my favorite snacks I found. That's expensive. But there's also a Simpsons element for people who are Simpsons fans. There's a special channel on our Discord just for Simpsons talk, where sometimes I tell behind the scenes stories, or I answer questions about things, all sorts of. It's kind of like having your own private DVD commentary. And also, we have a live stream every month, as well as, in addition to the live stream, there's a live stream for Simpsons fans. First, we had Dan Graney talking about the episodes he most famously wrote, the 300-pound Homer episode and Summer of 4'2". And then we also had, just last week, we had David X. Cohen, who talking about the Poochie episode and talking about Futurama and a lot of stuff that he's done. And I would say this is the kind of stuff you can't find anywhere else. And it's because I'm drawing in a lot of my old friends to come out and hang out. And it's a very small group of people who are very knowledgeable about The Simpsons. But that's one aspect of it. The food aspect is 80% of it. The Simpsons thing is another aspect of it. And there's even also a level for people. There's an extremely expensive level for people who are aspiring writers who want advice from me, because people are always mailing me stuff and asking me, will you read my screenplay? And it's too time consuming. and so now there's a level. If you want me to do that, you can sign up at the highest level and I will do it. And I will read your screenplay and give you notes and we'll discuss to tell you how to proceed with your career and stuff. But I'm not going to do it for free. So that's, anyway, there's a number of different tiers. If you're interested in any of those things, go to steamedhamssociety.com and sign up, and you'll see me on the Discord every day. And it's the kind of thing that it's been a lot of fun. We have our own merchandise, our own store, and the more people that sign up, the more I can stop working in TV and devote my full time to the Steamed Ham Society.
Oh my God! Well, I think I might be hitting that top tier, provided we do it at mates rates, Bill. Because we're talking about food, we're talking about The Simpsons, and we're talking about wannabe writers. Oh my God! Tick tick tick. So,
we would love to have you. Your money is just as green as ours if Australian money is green.
I've just lost my co-host. He's just now going to join the Steam Ham Society. He's gone forever. No, I love it. I feel like of all the people who have ever worked on The Simpsons, you've always managed to have your finger on the pulse. And I love the fact that you've managed to combine your two biggest loves, food and The Simpsons, and turn it into a career. That's sensational. I applaud you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to transition myself into a food celebrity, and hopefully, and I've been appearing on TV shows. I want to be the thinking man's Guy Fieri, and add a little comedy in there. And I've succeeded to some extent. I'm on a show. I don't know if you guys have the History Channel there, but there's a show called The Food That Built America. I don't know why you guys would care about The Food That Built America, but I'm an expert on. I'm a panelist basically on that show where I talk about various, things. All sorts of different types of histories of American foods, Nabisco Oreos, as we discussed. And I'm also in development for a show that I star in, and I do a lot of other food. I do panels and interviews and things. And I just say that this universe is a lot more fun than the regular TV universe, especially these days where the TV universe, the standard thing in TV these days is that you work on a show for about 6 months and you work your ass off, and then it gets about 6 hours of attention on the Netflix homepage and nobody ever hears of it again. And that's not very satisfying, although the money is satisfying, and also the money's drying up too. But that's another process. The thing that the streaming services have made sure is that the writers come in for as the shortest amount of time possible to write the scripts, and then they're out forever and they have to go on to their next job.
Are we talking Disenchantment here?
That's one of the shows that did that, as a matter of fact. And that's one of the shows that caused me to realize this career is dumb. At this point, it was a very fun career in the 90s when you're working on a show. And people who still work on The Simpsons obviously have the benefit of this. You're making 22 episodes a year. It's a full-time job. Now, 90% of shows are gigs. It's like a gig. It's basically driving for Uber or something where it's like, you got to get a gig, and then you're out on your ass again, because they figured out a way, as Silicon Valley always does when they get involved in some business, they figured out a way to absolutely minimize expenses. And for almost all TV shows, the jobs are now, you get in, they hire the writers for 6 to 8 weeks to write as much as possible, write all the scripts, and then they're gone forever. And then you got to find your next one. You got to find 4 or 5 jobs a year. Like, I feel bad for people who are like young people trying to start a family as writers in LA, where it's like, you're going to have to find 4 or 5 jobs a year just to make a middle-class income. And so that's actually going to be an issue in the upcoming writers' negotiations, which may result in a strike. Anyway, that said, I had and continue to have a lovely career in TV, but it's not that. It's much more fun for me to make a video in 3 hours that 40, 50,000 people see than spend 6 months working on a TV show that less than that number of people see.
Yeah, from what I understand, Bill, as well, I mean, aside from the economic component of, this current writing structure, it's also kind of killing the writer's room mentor-protege relationship as well. You can't sort of develop your own voice over time and learn from the people around you because of that gig nature, as you mentioned.
That's very true. And that's one of the things that they've had. The people who, it used to be that you would be, if you were lucky enough to get a job on a TV show that was on for a couple years, every year you'd rise up the ranks a little bit and you learn more. Like the next year you get to go to the set and work with the actors. The next year you get to work in the editing room. And so, after 4 or 5 years on a show, you're capable of running your own show. That structure barely exists anymore, which has caused a lot of trouble as well. But it's also like this thing is, well, just this year, this whole thing has been a huge mess. You know, like Time Warner was taken over by Discovery Channel, and they immediately canceled like almost all the shows and fired all the people who worked there because they're like, we have enough old stuff that just keep rerunning it. Like, I'm sure you heard about this, and there's so many animated shows were just canceled immediately. And they canceled that movie Batgirl or whatever it was. And like, this industry is a huge mess, except for like places like Disney, which are kind of like solid rocks that they know what they do and they do it well. Everyone else is struggling in this weird way to figure out how. It doesn't make any sense for these companies to keep making these expensive TV shows that don't get as many viewers as the average YouTube video, you know? So that's like, it's a weird time for this.
Well, you're moving into other formats and other styles as well, because I mean, you've got the project. Is it Space 1969 with Natasha Lyonne that you're working on?
Yes, I finished that. I mean, that's been out for a few months now, and it's actually been the most successful. I love working on that project. It's been the most successful thing I've ever done that wasn't created by Matt Groening, and for which I'm endlessly thankful. It's on audible.com. Now, again, I'm not totally sure how well it translates overseas. It's a retro sci-fi space comedy. It takes place in an slightly alternate history where JFK was not killed, but only slightly wounded in 1963 and woke up from a short coma with decided to end the war in Vietnam and immediately spend all of America's time and money and efforts expanding into space. And when the show begins, it's on his third inauguration day in 1969. America has a space station and is about to open a colony on the moon. And it's Natasha Lyonne stars as a nurse on the space station who was drawn into a conspiracy involving, I won't say who, but let's just say there's a huge galaxy of 1960s and 70s celebrities, music, cameos, references to things that, like, and I'm not like, I was only 3 years old at this time, so it's not like but I'm a fan of that era. So that's why I wrote this stuff, and it's been incredibly successful, and I hope, in discussions with him now to do the next season of the show, which I guess would be a sequel. Like, it was supposed to be like Audible only does either podcasts or audiobooks. This was neither. It's more like a radio show. And so they, up till the very last minute, they were like, is this an audiobook or a podcast? They decided to call it audiobook, but so it's really more of a thing where it's to me, it was more like Futurama, and there's a seasons with the stories that progress a little bit. So hopefully we'll be doing the second season or the second audiobook pretty soon.
Well, I think it'll translate, Bill. I mean, there are nerds outside America. You know.
Okay, good. As long as you'll get references to obscure American TV shows and records and products from the 60s. You don't have to know those things to appreciate the show. It's still a very solid story. It's still a very entertaining story with a lot of humor, and especially if you're the kind of person who likes the humor that I like, which is early Simpsons Futurama style humor, I think you will like it.
I'm just picturing us as Nelson walking out of the cinema going, there's two things wrong with that title, Naked Lunch.
Yeah.
we're just not getting it.
This is the thing, though. That's what made The Simpsons so successful. Growing up in the 90s for me was that there are a lot of the gags that I didn't really know exactly what they were doing, but they were just funny anyway. The Simpsons managed to incorporate references to things that kids probably wouldn't understand, but the adults understood, but kids still found funny anyway. Yeah,
and I think that's one of the reasons The Simpsons has this longevity, is that as people grow up, they watch the episodes again and they realize things that they didn't realize the first time. Even in the second and third time, there's a lot of stuff there for people who pay attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the episodes. The more times you see them, the more layers you discover. And there aren't very many shows like that. And there haven't been that many shows like that in history.
Well, we've been tackling Futurama as well recently. Futurama's the same. There's so many sci-fi references. As when I was younger, straight over my head, but I watch now and go, how did I not know this? I love this. This show is made for me. I love it.
Or if anything, you finally get old enough to understand what the Sneed's Feed and Seed gag actually means.
It took me a long time to figure that out, honestly, and I didn't work on that episode, but I think I saw it at least 10 times before I had any idea what that joke was.
Was there ever a time in an earlier episode, like for you growing up, well, not you weren't growing up, but you were in your teens, 20s, whatever, when The Simpsons first started, were there ever gags that sort of went over your head, and when you started working on the show, you sort of revisited those old ones and went, how did I miss that one?
I don't think so, because I think I was like 21 or 22, 23 when the show went on the air, so there were not very many. There might have been a few. There's definitely a few references that I still don't get to Shakespeare and other literary things, because I'm not as well versed in that stuff as some of those guys were. So there are often references to mythological things or Dickens or Shakespeare or things like that, or Ayn Rand, that I don't get and never got.
Well, before we get into Radio Bart, let's talk about A Night in Mission Hill in 4K as well.
Yes. Now, did you guys even get Mission Hill in
I don't think
Australia?
we did, because I've tried.
Okay.
I racked my brain. I'm like, was it ever on TV here? I don't think it was.
Well, it's on YouTube.
Yes.
So check it out.
Yeah.
Here, this is the thing that, okay, so for the people who don't know what I'm talking about, after Josh and I left The Simpsons, we created our own show. The show was called Mission Hill, and it was based on our observation working in The Simpsons that everyone on The Simpsons is under 12 or over 35, except for Otto. And like we were like, let's create a show where almost everybody is between that age. So it's a story of a brother who's older brother's 24, younger brother who's 17, and they have to move in together, and then they have roommates, and then there's other characters who are older, like there's Gus and Wally, who were TV's the first gay kiss ever broadcast on television was Gus and Wally. They're older, but in any case, it was kind of stories that are about urban young people, hipsters, I guess you would say, in the late 90s. And it's definitely a time capsule of that. And it's our favorite thing that we ever did. And it basically, it had a very short run on broadcast television, but then it went on cable on the Cartoon Network, what they call Adult Swim here, which is late night things that they broadcast. And they broadcast it over and over for years.
We had Adult Swim here as well. Yeah.
So, you probably didn't get that, but it built up this fan base over, because of that. And people grew up with it. Said it was a lot of people who grew up at, I guess that if people who were gay and lived in an oppressive environment or whatever, we keep hearing these stories of people who said, I found this show and it really changed my life, or it really influenced me in some way. So it's very satisfying, because especially after all these years. Anyway, to get to the point, Josh and I have been going around to movie theaters, showing Mission Hill episodes. And the reason is that a fan, illegally, I should say, I don't think a lot of the Warner Brothers employees are listening to this podcast, so I'm going to say, a fan took it upon his or her own volition to use AI to upscale the entire series to 4K, and it looks amazing. Not only did the fan do this, but the fan restored the original music, because all the music had been stripped out by Warner Brothers for the DVD because they didn't want to pay for it. So you're seeing the original episodes as they were meant to be seen, but in this beautiful 4K, which looks great projected on a movie screen. So Josh and I did it in Portland. We're doing it in Los Angeles in January. We're doing it in Cincinnati in February, and we're in talks with several other cities to do it there. I mean, there aren't a huge number of Mission Hill fans out there, but the ones that are very passionate. So we're taking these to small theaters where we can get 100, 150 people to come. And then Josh and I do a little talk. We answer questions. We give away some Mission Hill merchandise. So if you are listening to this and you would like to have your local theater show them, have them contact me on Twitter or Instagram, and we can set it up. All I have to do is pay for our travel, basically. That's probably prohibitively expensive. But if you guys want to get a syndicate of local theaters in Australia to host us and fly us over there, we will absolutely do it.
Maybe we can get like a string of shows, Night Mission Hill, plus some Simpsons trivia nights. We'll make a big tour of it or something with Bill and Josh.
If you guys feel like you can broker that, we will be there.
This fan that upscaled everything in 4K, do you still charge him to read your scripts, or does he get everything for free now for doing all that?
No, but we sent him a Mission Hill autographed Mission Hill cell.
Wow.
he was compensated.
They won out.
But,
okay.
Yeah, but he doesn't. This is like, as I said, this is illegal. And Warner Brothers to ever pay attention to anything involving Mission Hill, which they never have. Someone might get in trouble, but fortunately they're ignorant, and also almost everyone there has been fired. So we're not. I don't think we're in danger right now of anything happening.
I just don't think they care anymore, do they?
No, they never cared, and they don't care. Everyone there is desperately hanging on to their jobs and just hoping that someone can come up with a new, Batman thing to prolong the life of the studio.
It's terribly sad what's happening to Warner Brothers. I used to love it when that Shield came up, man. You knew you were going to be watching something of quality.
Those fuckers killed Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine, the magazine that had been around for 75 years, that had been the most influential, possibly the most influential thing in the history of American comedy. They shut it down when they took over. AT&T shut it down, and now AT&T has sold it, and Mad Magazine is history, and it endless. It's of all the business transactions that I have ever heard of, that one is the most infuriating.
If anything good comes out of this, it feels like though we're on kind of a new version of that wave that created I don't know, New Hollywood in the 70s. You know, when, you know, at the end of the 60s, you had all these bloated musicals and dramas that nobody liked, and all of a sudden along comes Francis Coppola and Martin Scorsese and Spielberg and all that, and reinvented the game. I don't know. I get the feeling we might be on the verge of something like that now.
I think that's definitely possible, and it interesting. It almost certainly will not come through these large conglomerates. You know, the large conglomerates are only interested in rebooting the same things over and over and over, and exploiting their library of superhero content, you know, and animated show content, and that I think what you're talking about is going to come from elsewhere. But I can't wait for it to happen.
It's funny what you were saying earlier though, about Disney, how you can trust Disney. When Disney first purchased Fox and The Simpsons, I was worried as a fan. I thought, what's this going to mean for The Simpsons? I think it's been nothing but a plus for The Simpsons because they whacked it on Disney Plus, and now it's more accessible now than it's ever been, particularly the new episodes. I can now keep up to date with the new episodes. I know they're going to be on Disney Plus every week here in Australia. I can watch them, plus all the old episodes. I feel like fans have gone back and revisited the show now again, who may not have revisited the show. I think it's just been a huge plus and a huge success for The Simpsons.
I agree. I have no idea how it's affecting the current Simpsons, whether like Disney's giving them notes or whatever on their scripts. But I agree with you 100% about that, because Fox bungled it with their Simpsons World. You know, it used to be the only way you could watch Simpsons from 2005 to 2018 was on Simpsons World, which was that site that they set up. You know, and they tried. It was such a huge mess. You couldn't even watch the show. It forced you to watch the commercials. And also, it was such a huge pain to log on. And you had to log in through your cable system. And even I gave up trying to watch Simpsons on simpsonsworld.com. And yes, having it on Disney Plus is amazing. But what they did, the unfortunate side effect of Simpsons World, was that kids, or basically kids from ages maybe like 6 to 20, are unfamiliar with The Simpsons for the most part, because it wasn't on. Like, my kids watched every episodes of Futurama 20 times, and every episode of Bob's Burgers 20 times, because it was on Netflix and you could just leave it streaming. But Simpsons wasn't that, and thus they and all their friends and similar kids all around the world aren't familiar with The Simpsons because it was paywalled for a decade and a half.
It's up to so many of us original fans to just keep the dream alive. Like, I make sure my 2 and 4-year-old watch The Simpsons at least 2 or 3 times a week, just to sort of plant the seed. This is going to be your new favorite show. Just be aware. If you're a fan of everything we do here at Four Finger Discount, you can show your support by joining the family at patreon.com/fourfingerdiscount. Here you'll get ad-free early access to all of our shows, Zoom calls with Guy and myself, as well as bonus podcasts such as Tales of Futurama and Guy on Springfield, where we go back and revisit classic episodes from the first 10 seasons. So go ahead and join the family today at patreon.com/fourfingerdiscount. If you feel like having yourself a time, then check out our new podcast, Going Down to South Park, where we go back and revisit every episode of the iconic series, dissecting the stories, reveling in chef sing-alongs, and chuckling at the occasional fart joke. Going Down to South Park is available now for free on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. If you're looking for a podcast that'll always be there for you, look no further than our new show, The One About Friends, hosted by myself and my incredible wife, Nicola. She is literally the biggest Friends fan I know, so who better to help me as we revisit every single episode of the show, discussing the characters, fashion trends, and how this iconic series still relates to our lives to this day. The One About Friends is available now on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Good news, everyone! Yes, everyone's favourite podcast from the year 3000 has returned. It's Tales of Futurama, available exclusively for Four Finger Discount patrons. Starting all the way back at Space Pilot 3000, we're reviewing every episode of Futurama as we sink back a cool, refreshing can of delicious slurm. So be sure to sign up today, or else Bender might tell you to
bite my shiny metal ass.
Tales of Futurama, available now at patreon.com/fourfingerdiscount. This message proudly brought to you by the Hypnotoad. We're here to discuss Radio Butt. We've got all the anti-Warner out of the way. Let's discuss Radio Butt. So this is, I believe you once told us that this was one of your favorite episodes. Is that correct?
Yes, this is actually, I would say, it's probably my favorite episode, and nobody ever says this one, because the thing about it is, when people are called upon to say their Simpsons episode, they say the ones that stick in your head, and the ones that stick in your head are like Monorail, or Frank Grimes, or whatever, where you can say 1 or 2 words, and like you know what it is, or Steamed Hams, for instance. This episode is not easily described, but I think it is like this was the, people say standing on the shoulders of giants. This is the giant that we were all standing on the shoulders of. Like, this episode has everything in it that made The Simpsons great. And whereas I could say the monorail does not. The monorail completely is lacking in emotion, and it's a great funny show, but like it doesn't have everything that made The Simpsons great in it. This does, and that's why I pick it generally. And it's because it's always just kind of gets lost in the morass of all those great season 3 episodes that were so classic, and it gets forgotten. But I think this one is the one where you can see like The Simpsons firing on all cylinders.
What I love the most about The Simpsons is when it's got a really good emotional beat, particularly like at the end. It's usually a Homer Lisa story that I love the most, but I love it when there's a story that involves the town, a big town, so like Bart's Comet or something like that, where the town's all together. That's what you get here. Good old-fashioned hole digging. I love this story.
But additionally, it starts small and gets big, which is the best thing. Like the Comet basically gets big and stays big. This one starts small and gets big, which I think allows you to have more dimension than the story that's big from the get-go.
The foundation is of course important, but I'm also a big fan of filigree, just like little bits of either one-liners or side gags or something like that. And this episode again, it strikes me as full of them. Whether it's just little bit appearances by Funky See, Funky Do, or a little montage in the middle where Bart is spending his birthday vouchers or whatever, and you've just got these little. Comic snapshots, or I'm always surprised when I revisit an episode and realize, that line that I've been saying forever out of context is from this. I mean, I am an absolute sucker. It sort of ties into what we were saying earlier about various foodstuffs. But if you say limited, you've got my credit card information almost immediately, and I will pretty much yell out limited, and then buy it. So I was very pleased to discover that this was in fact limited. So
I think this just epitomizes Springfield in the sense that they loved the idea of Timmy O'Toole. They got behind it. They could market it. Everyone was making a profit off of this kid chucked down a well. Once they found out it was Bart, like, no, party's over. Let's just go home. We don't care anymore. That just sums up Springfield to me. Well,
that's almost what happened. As I'm sure you guys know, there's a lot of real stuff.
Yeah. I didn't as a kid, though. I didn't know the story of Jessica McClure as a child.
There would be no reason for you to know it, but it was big news in America, and obviously this was inspired by that, and also the hype that was around it. I mean, it was a national event, and then, but I think that it clearly, like, putting Bart in that situation was genius, because it's like the dimension of him having faked everyone out makes everyone turn on him, which is so entertaining.
Particularly the police.
Yeah,
I said we just go home and have a sleep.
Yeah.
But so this Jessica McClure story, was that just like huge, was it? And if you were watching this as an American viewer, you would immediately go, okay, this is the Jessica McClure story.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure even in Australia at that stage, because Dano's a young whippersnapper, Bill. I'm a card-carrying Generation X member. But I'm pretty sure that in Australia we had it was probably before the second, between the first and second news breaks on the 6 p.m. news bulletin. Be like, meanwhile, in Texas, Jessica McClure still down well.
Right.
Film at 11. But it was enough of a human interest story that even Australians were interested.
Apparently, this story was pitched by Groening. He wanted it based on Ace in the Hole, the film, with the journalist faking the story of the guy down the well. That's what this was originally from. And John Vitti, who wrote the episode, didn't actually watch that until after he wrote the script, he said.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Ace in the Hole's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, and also this has one of your favourite characters, Dave Shutton, the journalist, as well. A guy loves him.
What a scoop.
Was there a reason you didn't bring him back more often in, say, season 7 and 8? Like, were there characters that you wish you had brought back now that you didn't?
Dave Shutton doesn't have much personality. He's only there for reporter jokes. Not like Kent Brockman, who has more pomp. Kent Brockman is also more a visual, being a TV broadcaster. Dave Shutton works in the print media, which even on a cartoon is hard to show. And he didn't have much personality. He's only there for reporter jokes, so like what a scoop or whatever. And he didn't. I don't regret that we didn't bring back Dave Shutton there.
Were there ever characters that you wanted to bring back but you just couldn't find a way to work them in?
No. We always did that. We brought back the ones we wanted to, and we didn't bring back the ones we didn't want to, like Bleeding Gums Murphy and Marvin Monroe. And so no, to be honest, I think we did. We brought the ones. We succeeded in bringing back the ones we wanted to.
I've got to ask you. You go from writer to showrunner, right? Season 7. What was the first thing that went through your heads when you were given that gig? Did you know it was coming? Was it something that you were transitioning into the role? Or was it just sort of like, hey, Bill, Josh, it's yours. What do you think?
We knew.
Take it out for a spin.
Yeah, I think the thing is that we were in negotiations for a very long time. We had been. The weird thing about the show is that we, in basically a course of 2.5 years, became the most senior guys on the show, because everyone, John Vitti and all those other guys, Mike Reese and Al Jean, all left. And then Conan was the most senior guy on the show, and then he left. And then leaving Josh and I, literally after 8 months on the show, we were the most senior guys on the show. And then, kind of for seasons 5 and 6, we kind of just wrote our own scripts. And Dave Merkin was very generous in just letting us kind of do what we wanted in most cases. And we spent most of our time in our office writing scripts. And then I think it was Dave Merkin recommended us, and we were it seemed likely that we would get the job, but basically it took months and months of negotiation because they wanted us to do it for 2 years and we only wanted to do it for 1 and see how we did. And it took months of them searching for replacements for us until they finally gave up and let us do it for 1. And then, so we knew, and we had lots of stuff that we wanted to do. Like we knew that we wanted to reproduce season 3 to some extent. And so we literally mapped out season 3 and said, okay, season 3 had 1 Itchy and Scratchy episode, 1 Sideshow Bob episode, 4 Barts, 6 Homers, 2 Lisas. And we basically just kind of tried to copy that, when we started. And then we were also like, but we also want to have 2 episodes a year where we just go nuts, and 2 episodes a year where we just do whatever the hell we want in this wonderful sandbox that we've been given. And that was where 22 short films came from.
Yeah, you were discussing that on the Icons on Earth series that aired recently.
It was amazing because you never in TV, 1 out of every 1 million TV experiences is you getting to do exactly what you want. Every other experience is you're on a show with some asshole, or the actor doesn't want to do it, or whatever, or there's the network is being a huge pain in the it's a huge corporate structure where you're always prevented from doing exactly what you want, unless you're someone, it's the 8th season of Seinfeld and the show's a huge hit, or you're Ryan Murphy or whatever, then you get to do what you want. But the average comedy writer like we didn't get that opportunity. And so when we took over, the network wasn't allowed to give any notes, nor was the studio. The only person who could ever give us any notes was James L. Brooks, but he was busy making his movies. So it wasn't like he was reading the script and giving us notes. We did whatever we wanted all the time. It was great. We only wanted to do it for 1 year because we were sure there was a lot of uncertainty about the show at that time, because what people don't realize now, we're looking back from season 36 or whatever the hell it is, was that most comedies did not go 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Like Cheers, which I think was the most successful show of that decade, went maybe 9 or 10 seasons. Seinfeld went like 8 or 9. MASH went like 7 or 8. So everybody was like, this show is going to be over soon. And we didn't want to be stuck there being the guys who ushered it into the grave, which is why we said we want to do 1 season and see how it comes out. And then it came out well, so we negotiated to do another season. It also gave us more leverage in negotiations, obviously, to stay for another season, which was great. But that was kind of what the thinking was then, is like, we're in the twilight of this thing. Let's have as much fun as we can before we have to leave. And obviously, that never came.
Did you stop watching the show after you were finished with your gig as a showrunner?
Yeah, I watched a couple of ones that we consulted on in season 9. And other than that, I think I've maybe seen 2 or 3 in the past 25 years.
Is that just from burnout, or was it just because you just didn't like because there was a change in the show between, say, 8 through to like 12. A real change, particularly the character of Homer. Did you watch the show and go, maybe it's just not the show that I enjoyed anymore, or was it just you were just burnt out? I don't think. I've seen a couple of episodes that I think were ones that I would want to see, like the one where they came to Portland. I obviously wanted to see, and a few other ones like that. But in general, I prefer The Simpsons the way it was in my head. And when I watch the show, this is why I don't like comedy movies that much anymore either. Unfortunately, when I go see the movie, I'm like, "Ooh, that's not the way I would have done it," and whatever, and it damages my. I can't just watch the movie, and that's why I like movies that are dramas or horror movies or whatever, where I'm not even thinking for a second about what it would be like to write that. When I watch a comedy movie, I'm like, "That's not working. That's not the way I've done it. The guy read the line wrong." That's the kind of way. That's what happens when I watch Simpsons that I didn't
that I didn't write or produce is like, ooh, that doesn't seem like Homer wouldn't know that or whatever. And I get caught up in the details and I'm unable to appreciate it.
That's the thing with this podcast is I feel like when I watch The Simpsons now, I'm watching it through a reviewer's eyes as opposed to just enjoying the show like I used to as a fan. But Guy would know how you feel with movies because Guy's been one of Australia's most acclaimed movie reviewers for the last 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, goodness.
Well, then you can't, I mean, maybe you have like, here's the thing that I discovered is that I loved going to comedy movies as a kid from like ages 12 to 20. And then once I started writing comedy, it became less enjoyable. And it's like, the funny thing is that there's a real cutoff because like movies I loved as a kid, like I loved the Blues Brothers. I just loved them. I would see them over and over. People who were 5 years older than me were like, oh, those sucked, because they were already comedy writing and they had complaints about it and they were unable to see it through a fan's eyes rather than a writer's eyes. And that's unfortunately damaged my appreciation of almost all comedy movies, except maybe like Borat and things like that are not so scripted and Jackass.
Yeah. A sausage isn't quite as tasty once you know the mechanics of making a sausage.
So, very true. Very true.
Now, getting back to Radio Bart, I was interested to read that this lost the Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program to Claymation Easter. Do you think if people were aware of the cultural impact back in the early 90s that The Simpsons would go on to have, do you think it would have won more Emmys?
The Emmys have no bearing on reality. Let me make that clear. The people who vote on the Emmys have are a weird subsection of people who work in TV and have gone to the trouble to fill out all the forms and crap necessary to vote in the Emmys and stuff. The same with the Oscars to a large extent. And so like the Emmys, The Simpsons was not well regarded by animators, in the 80s and in the 90s either. I think that people thought it was snotty, upstart for kids, whatever. Claymation Easter I can assume it was by Will Vinton, was probably regarded as a work of art, which it probably was. And so they weren't voting like this. This happened multiple times when The Simpsons was doing Emmys in the 90s, where it would lose to something inexplicably, and because like you don't know who the people were that were voting, you don't know, and like also the whole thing is such a fucking scam. Like the way to get an Emmy for a thing like this is make sure every single person on your production who's eligible to join the TV Academy joins. Everybody, all the way from the casting person to the casting people to the post-production people, the sound effects people. You make sure every person on your production joins. It costs like $135. You pay for their membership, and then they vote for you. Everybody gets to vote for their one show. You can vote for the show you work on, and they vote for you and nothing else. And that's the way it works.
No, I don't believe in nothing no more, Bill. I think I'm going to go become a lawyer.
Well, say during season 7 when we finally won, or season 8, that was what we did. After we lost in season 7, we're like, wait a minute. Is everybody here voting for us? And they're like, people were like, oh, we didn't know we could join. And we're like, okay, everybody is going to join. Everybody's going to vote for us. And then we won. I mean, it was a good episode. So, I mean, that have something to do with it, but it certainly doesn't hurt. It's you got to make sure you're using every weapon at your disposal.
Which episode did you send in for? It was homophobia, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the one that won in season 8. In season 7, we submitted the Halloween special, which had that 3D. We thought everybody would be so blown away by the 3D thing that they would vote for it. But no, we lost to Pinky and the Brain.
I have a soft spot for that episode because my mum banned me from watching The Simpsons for like the first 7 years of my life because I believe it's the first Treehouse of Horror, Bad Dream House. I copied Maggie and went to the kitchen and got a knife out of the drawer. So she was like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
She did the right thing.
So she's like, no more Simpsons. And then the first one I was allowed to watch, that was a new episode, was the Treehouse of Horror 6. So I've loved that episode because it was just like the ban was off.
Welcome back.
Oh my God, I'm horrified by this story. This is the one story I've ever heard where the parents were well within their rights to ban you from watching the show.
All right, well, we're running a little bit low on time, but so we will skip just the trivia and the favourite moments. We'll just get straight into the episode of Radio Bart. We'll skim through this here. So the original air date of Radio Bart was January 9th, 1992. It was written by John Vitti, directed by Carlos Beza, and it starred Sting as himself. Chalkboard gag, I will not carve gods, and the couch gag was the family bounces up and down on the couch. So the episode kicks off with Lisa doing her funky dance to the dance video. And you mentioned here, Guy, Funky See, Funky Do. You're a big fan?
I am indeed. Funky See, Funky Do. I've been ahead since the early 90s, right up there with Tony. I got to say, though, watching this episode, I was reminded of, I went to the lovely Louisa's teenage daughter's dance recital last weekend, and it was all, very innocent, although they were doing Greased Lightning, and it's like, you're keeping in the original lyrics about it being a real pussy wagon, and it's being sung by a bunch of 15-year-old girls. I feel like I'm on a watch list. But there was also, one young lady who decided to come out and do a, somewhat, provocative routine to Nelly Furtado's Man Eater. And again, it was kind of like, so yes, I felt very in sync with Homer, shall we say.
So there was a mistake in this episode. So when Funky See, Funky Do eventually take over We're Sending Our Love Down the Well song, they designed Kid and Play. They were meant to design Milli Vanilli, but they made a mistake. It
looked like half and half, because one definitely had kid hair, but another one looked a bit sort of Milli Vanilli-ish. By the way, I'm assuming it's Harry Shearer, but the other line that I use from this a lot is, "That's very righteous."
What are some of your favourite lines that you use in day-to-day life still, Bill?
Yeah. I mean, from their obscure ones that I use. That's everyone, me and Josh and everyone that we know uses. That's really more of a weekend thing, Ray, from the George Bush episode.
Yeah.
All the time, and it's not a laugh line, but it just really says something about the type of person. It really says a lot about the type of person that George Bush was, that he said that. And so that's the kind of thing, it comes into play a lot in your daily life.
I think the one that I say every single day is when my wife's saying, "Are you ready?" I always have to say, "Just got to put my shoes on." And it's not because I'm trying to quote The Simpsons. I just say that. So just that line, I just love that line. Just got to put my shoes on.
It might be true in many cases. I mean, that's...
Hey, kids, why sit in front of the TV when you can be on the radio?
We're gonna roll this truckin' convoy across the USA. Convoy.
That could be Bart.
Throw away your bulky transmitters and broadcasting towers. The Superstar Celebrity Microphone lets you hear your voice through any AM radio.
Hey, good looking. We'll be back to pick you up later.
He's in for some lovin'.
It's the perfect gift for birthdays, graduations, board meetings.
You're fired.
Bart's birthday's coming up.
But order now, supply is limited.
Limited! Do you have any of those microphones left?
Yeah, a couple.
Now, this was a real thing, guys. I don't know if you know this. This was a real thing. This was a commercial that was always on in the late 70s and early 80s for this exact product. It says they renamed it, but you could broadcast on people. It did this exact thing. It was a microphone that could broadcast on radios that were nearby. And the most memorable part was guys driving around in a convertible, I think, who broadcast this on some woman's radio, and they said, "Hey, good looking, we'll be back to pick you up later." That was the part was that in this show?
It was in this episode. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because that's the part that was something that everybody said, kind of like ironically in that era.
And Homer follows it up with, "Oh, he's in for some loving." But yes, so I don't think we ever had anything like that, did we?
To the best of my recollection, no.
That's what I can remember.
We bought all manner of stupid crap in the 70s at the Davis household, so we would have had it.
But we got the Supply Limited, which is also one of my favourite moments. I just love it. Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
But then we're in bed with Homer and Marge, and Homer's very proud of the present he's purchased. It's not going to be like the shoe trees that he purchased last year or the shelf over for Christmas. My only question is, why are Marge and Homer buying separate presents for Bart?
You can't ask those questions. You can't ask those questions. They go by fast. You don't think about it too much.
Although I've got to say, Julie's line read of "yeah" was just perfect after Homer's sort of bearing his soul about, "Ooh, I'm buying this great gift." Yeah.
Did you ever have moments in the writers' room, Bill, where kind of like that, where someone would go, "But what about this?" And you go, "Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter."
Yes, occasionally. This is a thing that's well known in TV writing. In fact, I think it was a phrase called refrigerator logic. Maybe it was Carl Reiner or someone that came up in the 50s. It might even been in the days of radio. Refrigerator logic is something where the viewer's not going to notice this error in logic until they're later at the refrigerator getting a snack 15 minutes later, and then they're like, "Hey, wait a minute. Why didn't Marge participate in the purchase of Homer's thing?" So a lot of times, we had a lot of real finicky writers, though, so you couldn't get away with that very well on the It was hard in the Simpsons writers' room to say, nobody's going to notice that. Often you couldn't get away with that.
And then they go into that. Was it simpsonsalt.net or whatever it was? What was the website?
Alt.tv.simpsons, yes.
Yeah.
That was around that time. But that was, and that was the fans. The fans would never notice everything and get all upset about it. But in the writers' room, that happened as well.
Did you ever take glee in seeing the dismay from some of the fans online of things that were so petty that it didn't matter, but they got so...
That I could. You don't have much time for this. I could go on for an hour about how much I fucking hated all TV Simpsons. Well, I started out liking it, and then over time I began hating it, and we had the modem removed. I had a modem installed back when you had to have a modem, and Fox didn't have. They had a Centrex phone line, so you didn't have regular phone lines, so we could get on, and I had to learn Unix and all this stuff back before. This is way before the internet, and it was using that. We got on all TV Simpsons. We were very excited, and over time I became more and more disillusioned to the point that it enraged me, and I had them remove the modem, and we never looked at it again.
That can be a podcast in the future. The hatred of alt.tv. Simpsons.
Was this when that convention question a bit came up, in so-and-so episode this happened, but then later on this happened.
Oh yeah, that was all from there. That was that Poochie was all based on that stuff.
All right, so it's the birthday morning. Homer's measuring Bart's height. Did you guys do this when you were kids, measuring your height on the wall?
Oh yeah, still everybody does that.
It's just a little touch. That's what I love about The Simpsons. Just a little touch of just everyday life, just measuring. Yeah. It's not sort of focused on. It's just a little thing measuring the height. But that's what makes The Simpsons so great. I love that. And then he watches his name on Krusty. Now I counted this. There was 45 names, and some of them were Simpsons staff members. But I worked it out that he paid $8 for this in 1992, which is the equivalent to around $16.99 now, right? So for 45 names in about 10 seconds, he managed to make, in current time, $764.
Savvy businessman, that Krusty.
Yeah. I never did anything. I don't think we never really had a Krusty the Clown kind of show in the afternoons here in Australia. When you were growing up, Bill, did you have like a Krusty the Clown or like an afternoon host?
Yeah, we did. Well, I think Krusty the Clown is a combination of two different things. There was Bozo.
Yeah.
Bozo the Clown, which is the most famous clown. I think Bozo had his own... I don't remember, but I do remember seeing Bozo a little bit. I think Bozo had his own show, but he might also have hosted afternoon cartoons. But in answer to your question, yes. I lived in the D.C., Maryland area. We had Captain Chesapeake, named for the Chesapeake Bay, who hosted the afternoon cartoons on Channel 20 when I was a kid.
What were your favorite cartoons growing up?
The funny ones, like mainly the stupid funny ones that were on Saturday morning that were like, I don't even know if you guys had these, like, Scooby-Doo, obviously.
Yeah.
But also like ones that were other Hanna-Barbera ones of that nature, like Jabberjaw and Great Grape Ape, things of that nature. That I liked all those. Fat Albert.
Was Jabberjaw based on Rodney Dangerfield? Was it?
Yeah, he was a Rodney Dangerfield.
He was no respect, right? Yeah. No respect.
Yeah. And I'm sure they didn't pay 1 cent to Rodney Dangerfield. That every single thing from Hanna-Barbera was ripped off from some other thing, as we later learned and pointed out, I think, in that episode with Chester Lampwick.
So Bart is off to his 46 local merchants, as Guy mentioned earlier, to get his free birthday goods and services, his free sundae. He's told to eat and get out. He goes to Jake's Unisex Hair Palace. We don't get enough Jake's Unisex Hair Palace, I feel. We never really fleshed out that character. Were there characters that you wish you had fleshed out a little bit more, or was it just like, nah, this guy's not enough to him?
No, I don't care about Jake's Unisex Hair Palace, sorry.
I'm wondering how unisex that place actually was. It didn't look very femme-friendly. I doubt the ladies are coming in to get a blow dry from Jake. But I'll tell you something, and this is probably outing me as a complete perv. I was... The tango lesson with Rosarita, there's a bit where sort of Rosarita wraps her leg around Bart's head, and Bart, given his height, I'm like, this could be misconstrued. But
Bart is we're at Wally's, which is a take on Chuck E. Cheese, which we don't have in the States in Australia, but we have very similar things. But Bart's loving life. It's his birthday party. Nelson's obviously cheating in the background. Then we get the mascots. I feel like being the mascot would just be a terrible job. Actually, I put up on YouTube recently, Bill, did you see Dan's performance as Homer on LA Law that I chucked up on YouTube recently?
Yes, that was hysterical.
How great is it? I feel like it was one of the best crossovers, like genius crossovers I've ever seen. Like
totally.
Simpsons crossovers.
Totally.
To have Dan as Homer on there, I thought it was really well done. But yeah, so Bart's playing Larry the Looter, which I believe makes an appearance in the show later on as well. Larry the Looter might have been like New Kid on the Block or something with Laura, the neighbor.
Tough break for Larry the Looter.
Then we get the iconic "You're the birthday boy or girl." This gets used whenever it's someone's birthday online. This gets used all the time.
Yes.
This is.
Hey there, I hear it's your birthday. How old are you?
Well,
That's great. Would you like us to sing you a special song?
Hell no.
You got it. Ready, Senor Beaverati?
I'm all ready. And a 1 and a 2.
You're the birthday, you're the birthday, you're the birthday boy or girl.
Was there ever something that you wrote that you thought was going to be like a thing that people talked about, like water cooler talk, like a quote that didn't actually take off? Like, you could never have predicted steamed hams would have become steamed hams.
No. I don't think we ever predicted anything like that would take off. Because we never had any idea what would be successful and what wouldn't. We didn't think people would like the Frank Grimes episode, and they didn't at the time. A lot of this stuff, by the way, has aged like fine wine. Where at the time people were like, I hate this," and then and they came to love it. So, in answer to your question, we never thought anything. We never were so bold as to think any of these things would survive for more than a few months or a few days, really.
I just think that's the Simpsons in general. I remember even when I was a teenager, like the season 15, season 16 era, people were hating on the show by this point. And you go back and revisit it now and you go, it's actually really good. And compare it to what's coming out now. Like, I feel like people would have to look back on it 10 years later and go, what were we whinging about? It was actually really good.
Yeah, so much of that stuff is in people's heads, is not reality. Is just it's people's perception of stuff that, like, a lot of people, a lot of times when you're watching TV and the show is a competently written show, it's about your mood. It's more, your perception of the show is more about what mood you're in than about the quality of the show. Because I've had the same thing, and Josh has had the same thing, where we thought we didn't like certain episodes that were actually magnificent episodes because we were just in a bad mood.
Yeah, I find I have to, if I'm doing a review, I've got to watch it in the afternoon. If I watch it at night time when I'm tired, I'm just going to hate the episode. I'm just too tired. Got a father of two small children, not going to happen. But this is where we get Bart opening up all the presents. And I like here that they plant the seed of the label maker here. You don't think it's going to be a big story point, but of course that's what unravels everything. Yeah.
It's really well constructed story.
Setup, payoff.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite payoffs of all time in The Simpsons. This crappy present that he got for his birthday that he hated from Patty and Selma, and then eventually it's what unravels everything in the story. Did you notice here that he was given Dr. Marvin Monroe's Guide to Etiquette? That's something that I'd never actually noticed ever in my life till I did this review. I know you said you hated Marvin Monroe. Was that just because of the voice, or was it just the character just had no substance to him?
Both.
Yeah. Also, he's from what I think has got to be... There's 2 episodes from season 1 that I think are just deplorable. It's Homer's Odyssey and There's No Disgrace Like Home. And that's got the shock treatment scene in it. And I just always associate Monroe with that scene. And I just go, ugh, I hate that.
I think those are good. I think those episodes are very good. Look, you have to remember that at the time, those episodes were amazing. They're not quite the show that it later evolved into. But yeah, I don't like his voice. I actually just don't like hearing the voice, and I don't like the drawing.
I'm assuming it's a very hard voice to do as well.
I bet it probably really. I think it was Harry's voice. It probably really messes up his throat.
Yeah. So Homer gives him his present. He thinks it's going to be good. He throws it aside. Doesn't want it at all. Then we get Martin giving the matching outfits, and Martin's a character that the older I've got, the more I've appreciated. I used to hate Martin as a kid, but I love him now. He's just so snooty, but you just got to love him.
Oh yeah, he's a very believable character. I think all of us knew someone like that.
And I think he's got my favorite death in all of Treehouse of Horror, and then in Treehouse of Horror 6 with the Freddy.
Yeah.
By the way, underrated line from Homer. I bet you think nothing's going to top that cactus.
So Bart is now putting the labels of property of Bart Simpson on everything, including Homer's beer and whatnot. And as we said, this is going to pay off later on. The microphone's in the window, and Homer's trying to show off this present that actually works.
Listen, boy, this is a great invention. Watch. We got a great big convoy rocking through the night. We got a great big convoy. Ain't she a beautiful sight? Convoy. Hey, good looking. We'll be back for some dinner later.
What did you say? I can't understand you with all that distortion.
Oh.
And I love the moment coming up where Marge sort of realizes, oh, okay, like because she says it's too distorted, and she realizes I've got to try and fix this, and she does. And the moment that Homer realizes that Bart actually enjoys his present is the kind of emotional scenes that I just love the most about The Simpsons. It's just like, it's just very heartfelt. It's like, you do love it, but then still, you got to always end it with a gag. Bart whacking the label on Homer's ass. We come back, and Bart's just taking the mickey out of everybody. I think, like, if you were a kid and you realized you could do this, of course you'd be doing what Bart's doing here. Like, sorry, lady, show's over. I love that. I remember my mum hating that. She thought it was so cruel from Bart, and I just thought it was hilarious as a kid, just pretending that Maggie was talking. They're listening to Janie and Lisa talking in a bedroom. Then we get the fake fart from Mrs. K. Then taking over Rod and Todd. Did you always get a kick out of The Simpsons taking the mickey out of the Flanders family when you were working on the show?
Yes, especially if they deserved it. Like, I think that's like sometimes the Flanders, I think, took unnecessary abuse. Obviously, from Homer, Ned always took unnecessary abuse. But I also think that sometimes when they there's nothing more satisfying than seeing them take abuse when they deserve it, which is only periodically, only rarely. In this case, it was kind of, it was, I don't know that they deserved it, but it was funny to see.
As long as it's funny, that's all that matters, right? But this is where Bart drops the radio down the well, and Willie overhears the call for help. Guy has said time and time again he's not a fan of groundskeeper Willie. What about you, Bill?
I like him fine. I wouldn't say that I love him, but I do think he's funny. I think he's funny in small doses, and he was very hard to write. Oh my God, writing, because he always uses these complicated expressions that like Sideshow Bob, he talks in a very distinctive way that requires every single syllable to be carefully written, and it's not, Homer you can write pretty easily, whereas Groundskeeper Willie always talks in these complicated metaphors and stuff that, anyway, so I like him fine in small doses.
Well, The Simpsons, I think, is filled with characters that are good in small doses.
Yeah, that's the magic of it. They got like 94 characters that are good in small doses, and four that are good in large doses.
So, what was the criteria you had to tick off to go, okay, it's worth doing an episode on this side character? There's enough there. Like, what did you have to tick off? What were the boxes?
They would have to have been a side character that had graduated into, like Skinner. By season 7, he had graduated into being a major character, I think.
Yeah.
Even then, it had to have enough to do with The Simpsons as well. Like, you couldn't just have Skinner by himself, except in 22 short films. Otherwise, it would have to be, Skinner with Bart, as it was in that episode, that 100th episode thing.
Can we just say, we recently tackled Grade School Confidential. I think that's almost one of my favorite episodes now. That episode is brilliant, and I did not appreciate it enough when I was a kid.
It is brilliant. It is very well written by my wife, Rachel Oakley, wrote that episode, and it came out great, and it continues to live on to this day because of the real emotion and the real pathos in those two characters.
Just them sitting at the dining table at Martin's birthday. I think it was just my favorite scene in the whole episode. I just thought it was just, like you said, it was just so real. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that thing as well as, a show is different every time you watch it because you're different every time you watch it. And, you get a few miles on the meter or life sort of, throws you a few, kicks in the head or something.
Oh, my God,
and you go,
yes.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
You people who grew up, everybody who related to Bart is now probably relating to Skinner. 20 years
like,
later.
Yeah, Seymour's got a point. The kids are, the children are wrong.
Yeah, and he's also he's working hard to try to make that crappy school run, and he doesn't deserve all this flack he has to take for it.
Okay, where's the Skinner spin-off that becomes Abbott Elementary? Do that.
You don't have to convince me. You got to convince the network.
Hey, let me be part of the Discord, and that's the kind of project you'll be, passing judgment on.
Yeah, great.
So that was the kind of. Didn't you want to do a spin-off series at the time when you were working on the show, Bill? Wasn't that a thing?
Oh yeah, this is another whole episode. So I don't want to take up too much here. We're already over an hour here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time or my time. But yes, that was already in the works at one point. Josh and I had wanted to do one for years that was called Springfield and was kind of like a focused on other characters beside the Simpsons. But Brooks did not like that idea because he's all about the family. He's all about the family and whatever. And he knows what people like.
Yeah. Well, we're speaking to Matt Selman recently a couple of weeks ago, and he just said, look, James L. Brooks just still has his fingerprints over everything. He's still got to approve things, still suggesting ideas. And I love that. After 34 years or whatever, he's still there.
He's a very talented man. As I did say, though, he wasn't there at all during the time that we were there.
So let's get into the Bart's played a trick on the town. They think Timmy O'Toole's down this well, and it's just escalating. Let's talk about We're Sending Our Love Down the Well song and getting Sting on. So originally it was going to be Bruce Springsteen, and they couldn't get Springsteen, which I think he must look back now and kind of regret that, even if he says he doesn't. I mean, it's this. How do you not want to go on The Simpsons in season 3?
I do not know.
Yes, but I think Sting was just incredible as a replacement.
I was just thinking about that too. For the Sting is perfect. Sting is far more perfect for that role than Bruce Springsteen was. Bruce Springsteen didn't ever do stuff like that. Like Sting occasionally would appear in things like We Are the World or whatever. I was just thinking about that because the people who turned us down, the many people that turned us down for that the Homer Palooza episode, and I was just thinking because I was listening to Stone Temple Pilots the other day on the radio. I was like, yeah, you turned us down. Well, look who had the last laugh, Stone Temple Pilots.
I just think Sting's great casting as well because he sort of has that reputation as being a little, not uptight, but...
Well, also that he seems the kind of person who's really concerned about good causes or promoting himself along with the good cause,
Plus, before he became a musician, he was a ditch digger. So he was perfect for this role. That's where the line.
I didn't know that either. Wow.
Yeah, that's why Schmudge. He's a good digger. That's where that came from, because he used to dig holes for a living.
I had no idea. Wow, that adds additional dimension to the story.
Yeah. But the whole take on We Are the World. See, I never lived through this era of the 80s, We Are the World for Live Aid and things like that. But I still found this hilarious. Like, it's clearly that these guys are just in it to make a quick buck. I just love the, where
oh my God.
you're gonna pay for this, pay for
I
that,
love it
and then
so
whatever's
much.
left, we'll just chuck it down the well.
That is one of my favorite things about this episode it's so funny, and it's so believable, and every crummy celebrity is in there too, including the Capital City goofball.
Yeah, and Marvin Monroe.
Every celebrity we've ever seen is all lined up, and they're singing all sincere and swaying back and forth.
Very big quote marks around celebrity. Bill, I'm trying to remember in We Are the World, who's the singer who, during the chorus or during the breaks in the singing, will sort of add their 2 cents and really go for it. I thought it might have been Springsteen or maybe Bono, but it's like,
I don't remember, but I do remember that the funny thing was that Dan Aykroyd was in there too, and everybody was like, "What?" I think it was that song. Dan Aykroyd, wasn't really known as a singer, but he was in there and he was swinging back and forth at everybody. I'm pretty sure it was that song. That's part of the comedy of this whole thing is the nature of these events.
The perfect writing for me is just the discussion between Sting and Krusty as well. He said, "What about Saturday?" I said, "Fine." True story.
Friday's worse than Thursday.
Friday's worse than Thursday. It's just fantastic, of course.
I wanted to do something to help that boy, so I called my good friend Sting. He said, "Krusty, when do you need me?" I said, "Thursday." He said, "I'm busy Thursday." I said, "What about Friday?" He said, "Friday's worse than Thursday." Then he said, "How about Saturday?" I said, "Fine." True story.
Yeah, I used to open for Krusty in '69. In fact, he fired me, as I recall.
Sting.
But this isn't about show business. This is about some kid down a hole or something, and we've all got to do what we can. There's a hole in my heart, as deep as a well, for that poor little boy who's stuck halfway to hell.
Though we can't get him out, we'll do the next best thing.
We'll go on TV and sing, sing, sing.
And
We're sending our love down the well.
All the way down.
We're sending our love down the well.
Down that well.
Krusty, what are your plans for the royalties?
Well, we gotta pay for promotion, shipping, distribution. Those limos out back, they aren't free. Whatever's left, we throw down the well.
But yeah, it all unravels when they overhear some chewing going on down the well. And Bart obviously says that he was trying to gnaw off his foot, couldn't get through his sock, and Lisa says they're going to want to get you. So Bart realizes he's got the, as we said, the payoff with the label on the radio.
Can I just say though, just quickly, that whole thing with Ken Brockman, it's one of my favourite moments. My sister Margot called me up one day and said, I was watching The Simpsons last night. The bit where it's like the boy has reverted to a feral or wolf-like state, and there's that little artist's impression of I was a teenage werewolf.
Yes, that's so funny.
She laughed for like 5 minutes straight, and now every time I see her, I'll occasionally sort of go the face, just make her laugh. So yeah, that's one of my favourite bits from this episode. Just that little throwaway bit. I love it.
Do you and Josh have moments in the show, Bill, where no one else really finds it all that funny or anything, but it's just, it reminds you of something that when you're working on the show, and it's just a little inside joke that you and Josh have. Do you ever have moments like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of those. Do you mean things that are on the show, or
yeah? So things that are on the show that people might find funny for another reason, but it reminds you of something else that you and Josh were working on at the time, or it's just in the writer's room, someone said something and you burst out laughing.
Yeah, there's dozens of those things in there. I mean, that was the magic of not having having to take any notes from anyone, is we just put the stuff right in. And there's tons of things like that. There's tons of moments. It probably wanted at least one every episode where other people were like, "This line isn't getting a laugh," and we're like, "We just want to keep it, okay?" And then that would be the end of the discussion.
I just feel like that gig you had there with The Simpsons just seems like the greatest gig you'd ever have in television, like you were saying earlier. Was it just because you just didn't want to do it anymore, or was it just because everyone did 2 years?
It was a combination of those things. It was that we. Well, everybody up to that point, everybody had done 2 years and left. It was supposed like being a president. You get 2 terms and then you leave, and so that was partly the thing, but also it was the golden age of development deals, and you get paid a lot of money, more money than working on The Simpsons in some cases, to go off and make up your own show, which is what we did with Mission Hill. And that was, so that's part of it. And also because, as I said, we were thoroughly convinced that the show was going to end any minute. Even like the last part of season 8 is kind of shaggy because we were like, this show, we were out of ideas. And we were like, okay, well, we don't want to be the people there ushering it into the grave.
Okay.
But that never happened. So
it's still going. Yeah. It's been going as long as I've been alive. But basically, everything's unraveled for Bart. No one wants to pay any attention to it anymore. This is kind of like how, I don't know if this is how it would happen in real life, but do you feel like, just say, for example, if you found out that Jesse McClure was pulling a prank on people, how do you think the public would have responded to that? Do you think it would have been similar to Springfield, or do you think it would have been a different way?
It would have been very similar because that happened. That happened in America with that hot air balloon thing. Do you remember this? It was about 10 years ago where this exact, Balloon Boy. I don't remember all the specifics of it, but it turned out it was pretty much exactly what happens in this episode. It was a kid had been caught up in a hot air balloon that had gotten loose and was blowing across the upper Midwest, and it turned out it was all a hoax, right? Isn't that? I don't remember the specifics, but if you Google Balloon Boy, you'll find out.
I'm thinking, was it actual, like an early attempt to make a viral video or to make a YouTube sensation or something?
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, people were not happy about it, and that's why it sticks on. It's still around to this day as Balloon Boy. If you say Balloon Boy, you're talking about something like that, and it is. So, in answer to your question, yes, that's 100% what would happen. People would turn on you as they did on Balloon Boy.
So everyone's given up on Bart. The song's now down to number 97. Not Milli Vanilli. What are they called? Funky See, Funky Do have taken the number 1 spot once again.
With I Do Believe We're Naked.
Yeah, I don't love the deja. Now that's a story, and it's a squirrel that looks like Lincoln.
Yes.
Talk about setup and payoff, though. I mean, it's the timeline's a little shorter, but cutting back to Ken Brockman a little later, it's like he's got his Walter Cronkite voice on. The Lincoln squirrel has been assassinated.
Yes, that's
we'll
really
save
good
this
stuff.
all night if we have to.
Bart, honey, I made you an extra warm sweater you can wear while you're down in the well.
Mom, it's too big.
Don't worry, he'll grow into it.
Homer!
I've done a lot of bad stuff through the years, and I guess now I'm paying the price. But there's so many things I'll never get a chance to do. Smoke a cigarette, use a fake ID, shave a swear word in my hair.
That's all I can stand. I can't stand no more. I'm gonna get you out of there myself.
The Simpsons is one of those shows where, even when I was a kid, it managed to make me cry. And I remember almost crying in that moment because I think I just related to Bart. Imagine being trapped down this well and no one cared.
Sweet.
Yeah,
I know.
So Homer says he's had enough and he starts digging. I love that Marge gets the wheelbarrow as well just to help out. And then Willie says, why didn't I think of that? But then we get some random guy just run over to start helping. Who is
I'm wondering who's the third guy? Why was he there? And why does he have the shovel?
It doesn't matter. But anyway, so they dig Bart out. They get down. It's got one of my favorite moments in the episode when they find the canary. Just a canary.
Died of natural causes.
Yeah. So they get back in the hole. Stinger's the one. He's digging Bart out. He rescues Bart. Homer shoves him out of the way, and then Homer says they're going to do everything they can to make sure no one falls down this well again. And it's just really putting the sign saying "Caution well." That should do it. And yeah, like you were saying, Bill, like this is an episode from season 3 that's just hidden amongst the gems, but it's a gem in itself that doesn't tend to get the love that it deserves, does it?
Right. It's very much like, I think certain historical figures, like, we have, I hesitate to say this, but we've had a lot of presidents who did a better job than John F. Kennedy in keeping the country running well that everyone's forgotten. And this show is that James K. Polk, perhaps. I can't really say without a deep dive into it, but this episode deserves far more accolades than it gets for the reasons we discussed earlier.
It's a little gem unto itself. I mean, not a high carat gem, but it's studded with all these little bits and pieces.
Yeah. Like 20 different little things that we remember as some of our great Simpsons moments of all time are all in this episode.
Yeah, you sort of walk away from the episode saying, "Oh, it's got this, that, and that." Oh, wow!
Exactly.
All in the it's you've got yourself a box of canned chocolate that's actually got like three toys in it as opposed to just one.
Yes, precisely. Well said.
All right, well, let's get back to the food then. Let's plug the Steamed Ham Society once more, Bill, before we let you go.
Okay, go to steamedhamssociety.com. Sign up for the most expensive level that you can afford. and enjoy the fruits of your, whatever. If you want the Simpsons level for our live streams and our Discord, for the screenwriting level, or any of the other food levels with the various treats and stuff. It's like, as I said, it's for food lovers and Simpsons fans worldwide, and it's a fun place to hang out, definitely.
It just makes me so happy that it's been such a success for you, because I was telling Guy off air before you came on that of all the people who have ever worked on The Simpsons, I feel like you've been the most open with fans, willing to talk for the show. You're willing to talk to anybody. You put in all the extra effort for us, and we do appreciate it. So I wish you nothing but the success with it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right, guys, like you said, check out steamedhamsociety.com. And also, where do they go to find out Mission Hill in 4K? Where can they go and find out more details on that?
Probably just on my Twitter is the only place. And my Twitter is Twitter may be out of business any hour now. So if you need further information, go to my Instagram. Both are that Bill Oakley.
Yeah, at that Bill Oakley. Make sure you like that, guys. All right, guys, this has been our review of Radio Bart. Don't forget to continue to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Check us 5 stars and leave a few kind words. And also follow us on Instagram at 4FingerDiscount, at 4FingerPod, on Twitter for as long as it's around. Thank you once again, Bill, for your time. You're an absolute champion, and wish you all the best with Steam Ham Society.
Thank you, and work out something so that I can come to Australia for free. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start do people still do GoFundMes? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, dude, let's do it. I'll do it. We'll do a tour of the whole country for like 6 months and showing Mission Hill to people who never heard of it before.